This entitled parent thinks that they have the right to control when and where people can drink alcohol, even on their own property. Well, she's about to get a rude awakening when the neighbor doesn't comply. Happy birthday, today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. Let me first give you some background so you get where people are coming from. My father has left a few years prior. Mum bought a small house from the money from the divorce, and a few months before has gotten herself a boyfriend. At first I was truly happy she had moved on, but soon I realized she has fallen for some real piece of crap. Now, you need to understand, my father was an alcoholic and narcissist, so my mum's normal meter was truly broken. Anybody treating her halfway decent must have appeared like Prince Charming to her. So please do not judge her too harshly for her choice. I don't. Now, he was not only halfway decent, he really treated her well. Though he was an a-hole to me, bought her flowers, went out to eat regularly, etc. But what I realized, and she did not, was that he was a parasite. He had maybe $100 to his name, and his only income as support was from the state, a couple $100. Now, I already hear you ask, how did he afford the flowers and going out? By living rent-free and having all his costs paid for, till he gets back on his feet. One last thing. As the headline already told you, he soon started to show an immense entitlement towards me. Basically, he said this is his house, so now I have to follow his rules. Of course, I told him this is my mum's house, not his, and I do not have to do jack all unless mum tells me so. He took that really badly, since he had an ego problem, as you probably already guessed. I tried to tell my mum, but she would not believe me since he always acted very nice to me when she was around. But as soon as she was gone, the Cold War started. He pulled a lot of small crap like demanding and patronizing voice I bring some beer while watching TV with me, while mum was on the loo. When she came back, he told her he had asked me nicely to bring him a beer when I stood up to get something, but I refused, insulted him and sat back down. So of course she told me to apologize and get him beer. I tried to explain, but she would not let me. So he kept pulling petty bullcrap to establish dominance. After this whole story, I asked my mum why she would always believe him and not let me explain. Apparently he had told her I was super jealous he was in the house and wanted to get rid of him by trying to make him look bad. So she backed him to show me he is not going anywhere. Time for the main act. I had gone out the night for Friday to Saturday, and had come back at 3 AM. My mum was gone over the weekend, and he freaking exploded. How dare I disrespect him like that coming home this late? I told him calmly he does not get to declare a curfew for me, and my mum allows me coming home this late. Which is true, provided I stayed at the house of 3 specific people I am friends with, and whose parents are my mum's friends. He flipped out even more and called me a dirty liar. He then gave me the classic, as long as you put my legs under his table. And me being a smart aleck of course answered, this is my mum's house and my house. You are a guest here. He screamed at me. He is gonna kick me out of the house and will not be allowed back until my mum returns. I screamed back he cannot do that since this is not his house. I threatened to call my mum. He, emboldened by her backing him up all the time, told me to do just that. But I better not lie to her and tell her what is actually happening. I put her on speaker and told her, he is trying to kick me out of the house until you come back Monday. It was Saturday. She did not believe me and told me to put him on the line. So he started by telling her I disrespected him as the man of the house by coming home so late, and the lying to him about the being okay when I stay at friend's house, and that I need to learn to respect him. So it is up to him how he disciplines me, since she is not there. Then he lied and said he told me to be home by 1 AM. For the first time, he let his mask slip, and she picked up on it right away. So let me get this straight. I allow my son to be out till 3, but you think you get to overrule my decision on my son? And now you think you get to kick my son out of his house? He realized he messed up. He tried to get her to take his side, but only dug his hole deeper. Well, he keeps not respecting me in my own house. If you let him win now, he'll never respect me. And you think the right punishment for disrespect is to kick him out for 2 days? Yes, finally you get it. I knew you would come around. Well, he did nothing wrong, since he was allowed to go out for that long. You have no right to overrule my decisions on my son. But I am not done. Apparently you think the right punishment for your disrespect is to kick you out till Monday. But I only have $100. This is not fair. Where am I supposed to go? I'm sure my son had even less money, and you did not give a crap. You got 30 minutes to leave. I'll tell the neighbor to check. If you are still here in half an hour, he will call the police and have you trespassed. When I come home Monday, we will talk. I am such an idiot that I kept believing you over my son. Once Mum came home, I kept telling her how he kept pulling this bullcrap on me, and she was so sorry she kept backing him up. I tried to tell her many times he treated me exactly like my father did when she was not around. One major reason for their divorce. But since he treated her so differently and acted so differently than my father, she believed him that I was jealous and tried to get rid of him. But when she heard him say those words my father said so many times, "You owe me respect since you live in my house," she suddenly realized I was telling the truth all along, while he was the liar. That is why she got so furious so fast. She never realized how badly he really treated me, and how entitled he acted since he had hidden it so well before. But when he started to talk about deserving respect in his own house, something my father kept saying, from me, a house he did not put a penny into, but was somehow his. Even worse was thinking he could overrule her on her own son. My father kept overruling her decisions. So she finally saw through him and got all the evidence she needed I was telling the truth all along. They broke up that Monday. He never even got back into the house. They met for a coffee and she demanded her keys back. Originally she wanted to give him a month, but when she entered the bar they met at, he right away started to scream at her how dare she kick him out of the house like this, and that now he would never get the respect from me he is entitled to. So she told him he is only here to ask for the keys back, and that they are through. I can imagine it being pretty easy for the mother to listen to the partner at first because, you know, it's a new relationship and you don't want there to be any unnecessary conflict if it doesn't need to be there. So of course she's going to assume the best in her partner who's treating her nicely and not necessarily believe the son. It's a forgivable mistake, I think. I get that quarantine has everyone on edge, but holy crap. This happened yesterday. It was really nice out, so I thought I'd take a break from writing all my papers to sit out on my porch with a nice glass of wine. Since I live on the first floor of the complex, I have a small green patch where I have a bird feeder set up and some flowers. Past that is the public sidewalk, and there are no fences, so it's all pretty open. I take a chair out the sliding glass door, onto the patio/porch, I forgot the difference, leave the screen door closed so that my cats can get a bit of the outdoor air, and plop down and pour myself a glass of Cabernet. At that point in the day, the sunlight was right on my porch, so my cats were laying in the sunbeam right behind me. As I'm watching the day go by, seeing the occasional dog on a walk or people just taking a stroll, a little kid, about 5 or so, comes up into my view, trying to jump from sidewalk square to square. I hear the mum somewhere out of my line of sight saying, "Don't go too far ahead." So he stops where he is and looks around. He sees me and my cats in behind the screen. "Look, Mum," he says, "those kitties are the same color as S'more." I guess his cat is also a calico. By this point the mum catches up and glances in my direction to see what he's pointing at. "Oh yeah," she says. Then she looks over to me and her tone changes quickly. "What the heck are you doing?" "Me?" I said, a bit thrown back. "Yes, you! What do you think you're doing? You can't drink here. These are student dorms." These are actually just apartments unaffiliated with the university. But since they're across from campus, pretty much only students live here, so many think it's another dorm. I'm over 21. "No, you're not. These are student dorms." I guess she forgot that students can also be over 21. I'm pretty sure I'm over 21. "Don't you talk back to me. Get rid of that drink right now. You can't drink in public." I guess she decided to switch gears on how to get me to get rid of my drink. She starts walking towards me. Her kid comes too, I guess wanting a closer look at the cats. "Lady, I'm on my own porch and I can drink wine if I want to." She clearly didn't like me talking back. She got angry. "I said get rid of that drink." She continues to approach, yelling at me like I'm her kid. and I won't put my toys away. By that point, the kid was on my porch, looking at my cats through the porch screen. No. I take a sip.
Get rid of it or I'm taking it!
By this point, she's right in front of me, face red, hands on her hips, looming over me like that crap's gonna work on a 26-year-old. No, now get off my porch, I said, standing up with my voice raised. By then the cats had run off and the boy was bummed. We continued to stare down each other. I'm on my own porch, I'm not hurting anyone, and I'm 26. I'll drink on my porch if I want. I take another swig in front of her. EM then smacks the wine out of my hand and it nearly hits her kid as it shatters on the floor. What the frick, lady?
I told you to get rid of that drink!
She yells, not at all worried that her kid could have gotten hit. Screw you! I shoved her and tried to pick up the big pieces so her kid didn't get cut. He was wearing sandals. Her kid runs off back to the sidewalk.
How dare you push me!
How dare you destroy my property! Now get the frick off my porch or… I started waving around the broken glass piece and she took that as a threat.
Are you threatening me?
I actually wasn't. I just get expressive with my hands when I'm mad and I happen to have the broken glass in them. But by this point, I'm fed up with this bee. Yes! Now get the frick off my property! By this point, we had attracted a couple of onlookers, which EM finally noticed. She looked around and saw a couple on the sidewalk gawking at her, as well as my neighbor sitting on his porch nearby. She looks around. Her face, which was red with anger, was now red with embarrassment. She huffs and puffs and spins around, grabbing her kid's hand and speed walks away from all of us, as fast as she can. My neighbor asks if I was okay. I said I was fine, just annoyed. I swept up the broken glass, went back inside, poured another glass, and watched some JoJo to get my mind off things. Weird bee. Life is stressful enough when you just want to have a relaxing time, sit down maybe outside on your porch, have a glass of wine. The last thing you need is an entitled parent coming up to you, let alone telling you what you can and can't drink on your own property. Busybodies are the worst. People need to learn to mind their own business. If they're not hurting anyone else, is it really worth going over and making a big deal out of it all? Lady, you shattered glass everywhere. You actually caused more potential harm than anyone else in this situation. This is not my story, but a friend of mine, who we'll call Hilda. Hilda and I would meet every morning with the group of owners at the dog park before self-isolation was in effect. Now, there's not a lot of detail as Hilda is a straight-to-the-point kind of storyteller, and this happened a good few years ago. Hilda is an elderly widow, and she lives alone but has two gorgeous German shepherds, whom are very well trained. They don't bark, good listeners, and can even walk off-leash with no fear of running too far away. She had a next-door neighbor, Bob, who was a similar age and lived with his wife. Bob is our entitled parent/grandparent. Now, since Hilda's dogs are so well behaved, the local postmen have no issue with them, and would even give them a quick pat. During one of her walks with the dogs, Hilda walked past Bob's house and offered a wave, but Bob just looked at her. Not too long after they got back home from their walk, Hilda was greeted by a police officer at her door. PO is officer, H is Hilda. Good afternoon, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Can I help you?
We got an anonymous tip about your dogs acting aggressively towards the postman and your neighbors.
That can't be right. Are you sure they're my dogs?
You own two German shepherds, right? May I see them?
You mean these dogs?
Hilda called her two boys over, who then proceeded to greet the officer with tail wags and happy derpy faces. She even showed him how well trained they were. The officer shook his head, told her not to worry about it and to have a good night. Hilda figured out Bob phoned in the bogus tip when she realized he was the only one in the neighborhood who saw her with the dogs. Now, I don't know how long it was since that incident, but Hilda found meat in her backyard. Spoiled, rotten meat. Of course, dogs can eat raw old meat, but I'm pretty sure meat with green discoloration isn't good for them. Hilda caught Bob's grandchildren throwing the meat over the fence with his wife providing it. Since she didn't blame the kids as they were young and probably thought it was a game, but she called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation, including the previous incident. Bob and his wife were only left off with a warning and a fine, as I guess it was considered either littering or destruction of property, I'm not sure. The final incident that wrapped everything up in a nice big bow was when Bob went on full Jack Nicholson screaming rant in the middle of the street in front of Hilda's house. I wish I could tell you what he said, but not even Hilda knew what he was on about, as she just called the police as Bob was making threats and threatening gestures towards her house. Bob resisted arrest but was eventually taken away. After that, Hilda didn't know what happened to Bob and his wife. They just stopped living next door. She was still baffled why they targeted her, until a mutual friend of Hilda and Bob mentioned something that jogged her memory. Bob and Hilda met each other way before they became neighbors. He had actually asked her out on a date, but she wasn't interested. 30 years ago. This man got married, had children, had grandchildren, but needed to seek some sort of revenge on the woman who turned him down 30 years ago. Whilst Hilda did all the same, but didn't even remember who he was. I love Hilda. I was thinking it was pretty strange, either this guy hated dogs or there must have been something that Hilda did that really ticked him off. Well, I guess it was the latter. I guess she rejected him 30 years ago and the guy never got over it. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.